13 sinister rules from a haunted Montana oil field where unexplained dangers lurk. Clara had heard the whispers before she even set foot in the town. The locals spoke of a cursed oil field, a place where shadows moved on their own, and those who ventured too close vanished without a trace. The first night in their rickety new home, she felt it. A spine-chilling chill that seeped into her bones, as if something unseen was pressing against the walls. She brushed it off, telling herself to focus on making a new life for Dylan. But the dread lingered, crawling under her skin. A faint cry echoed through the still night air, Dylan's voice. Clara raced down the hallway to find him sitting up in bed, eyes wide, sweat glistening on his forehead. He mumbled about a figure, dark and watching, lurking near the oil rigs. Panic seized her heart. The night seemed to stretch and twist, tapping into her deepest fears. In her quest to unpack the boxes heavy with memories, Clara stumbled upon a Facebook group titled 13 Sinister Rules, devoted to the nearby oil field. The posts struck her like a cold slap. Accidents, disappearances, and warnings spelled out in chilling detail. She hesitated, a knot tightening in her stomach. But no, just stories spun by bored townsfolk, she told herself, shaking her head to dispel the unease. Yet the town's charm faded quickly, revealing shadows hidden behind the cheerful facade. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days drifted into unsettling uncertainty. Dylan began waking up nightly, bathed in sweat, eyes wild as words tumbled from his mouth about that shadowy figure. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she listened to him. The neighbors who once welcomed them began to shift, their smiles too tight, laughter too forced. She caught whispers in the air, the clinking of beer bottles stained with fear. The teenage boys who played basketball with Dylan lost interest, their eyes darting towards her like they were sharing secrets about her family. Digging through the Facebook group, dread spilled into her veins as she read the rules. Each one outlined catastrophic consequences, unstitched, closely with tragedies tied to the oil field. She felt her breath hitch. The stories mirrored her worst fears. And then came the evening when Dylan vanished. Panic seized her, clawing at her throat as she bolted from the house, shadows whispering on her heels. The neighbors stood by, cold and stony, their eyes betraying their knowledge, their intimacy with the lurking horror of the oil field. Clara pressed forward, desperation guiding her steps, until the familiar rig loomed in the distance. The metallic scent of oil hung thick in the air as she reached the edge of the field, eyes scanning the twisted metal of the abandoned rigs. A figure stood there, silent and still, reminiscent of a lost memory. Clara's pulse quickened, dread pooling in her stomach. She could feel the weight of the town's twisted secrets pressing down on her, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Dylan!" she cried, voice echoing against the desolate landscape. The sun dipped lower, shadows elongating, dark and dangerous. What twisted truth lay hidden between her son and their neighbors? Just beyond the gnarled iron structures, the encroaching darkness held secrets she was not ready to face. She stumbled forward, the instinct to protect surging within her. But what awaited her in that ominous shadow? The figure shifted, and Clara's heart lurched. It was not Dylan. The familiar outline of a child was buried in the dark, distorted by the trembling shadows that knotted around them like spider webs. An unsettling pressure pressed against her, threatening to clutch her throat. "Dylan!" she screamed again, voice raw, desperation oozing from every word. The shadows lengthened, swallowing the last of sunlight, plunging the world into an oppressive twilight. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes on her, a jagged sense of being watched creeping under her skin. The darkness buzzed with whispers, whispers that tangled and danced just out of reach. Clara stumbled forward, fighting the urge to turn back, feeling the terrain shift beneath her feet as if it wanted to drag her down. "Stay with me," she whispered into the growing night. "I won't let anything happen to you." But she couldn't drive away the ominous feeling that echoed back, a sickening reminder of the townspeople's tight-lipped smiles and the way they glanced away as if agreeing on something unspoken. As she approached, the figure transformed in the dim light. Clara felt a flicker of recognition. It was an old mannequin, covered in stains and rust from years of neglect, the haunting remains of a joke gone too far. Anger surged through her veins. How could they let this happen? Where was her son? The wind howled, and she looked back towards the town. Are they watching? The thought gnawed at her. She pressed onward, stepping into the alarming embrace of the oil field, her breaths rapid and shallow. Each step stirred ancient ghosts that echoed with every creak of metal. She didn't know if they were warnings or welcome. Suddenly, the air thickened. Clara stopped, heart hammering, straining to listen. A voice, barely a whisper, snaked through the air. "Help me." It was Dylan. Panic twisted her gut as she darted toward the sound, fear puncturing every attempt at bravery. "Dylan, where are you?" The field around her morphed into a maze, each rig looming like a giant specter. Shadows twisted menacingly, gripping her as she navigated the oppressive darkness. She thought of the rules, the chilling words that had seeped into her mind. Rule number 3, never enter the oil field alone after dark. She had failed. The whispers grew feverish, a cacophony of sound that scraped against her sanity. Clara clamped her hands over her ears, but could still hear the chants. "Leave, before it's too late. Leave him." "No, I won't abandon him." She fought back the fear, clawing her way through the oily air. But inside, doubt festered. Maybe the town knew something she didn't. Maybe Dylan was gone forever, just like the others. Then a flicker caught her eye. The unmistakable glow of vibrant green light pulsed, coming from behind a massive rig, beckoning her forward. There it was, the lure of something unnatural. Drink deep of the oil, surrender to the darkness. Clara stepped toward the light, her body moving before her mind could resist. As she crossed the threshold, the air crackled and time seemed to slow. "Dylan," she breathed, her voice trembling. Whatever waited ahead, she could feel it, could see it now, the weight of fear settling like a stone in her chest. But the voice called out again, and she was unwilling to let go. The moment stretched, despair coiling tightly around her like a noose. What sinister fate awaited her in the glow? Would it reveal the truth or consume her whole? In that eternal heartbeat of hesitation, something lurked behind her, something drawn by her fear, a shadow that shifted and twisted as it prepared to strike. "Turn around," the whisper urged, wrapping around her mind. You have to turn around. But could she, and would she dare to face what was creeping behind her? Clara hesitated, the urge to spin around battling her instinct to press forward. That voice, smooth and sickly sweet, echoed in her mind like a siren's call. A chilling dread coiled deep within her stomach. She could feel its icy tendrils wrapping around her spine. "Stop, don't look back." She blinked, willing herself to move away from the pull of the green light. But another desperate cry cut through the air. "Mom!" The sound clawed at her heart, a dagger of hope amidst the choking darkness. With a burst of determination, she lunged forward, her hands outstretched toward the glow that pulsed like a heartbeat in the dark. As she drew closer, the glow illuminated a grotesque tableau. The oil field, once merely terrifying, now morphed into her worst nightmare. In the flickering light, shapes writhed and twisted around old machinery. Figures cocooned by darkness, faces obscured, but eyes wide, pleading in a ceaseless cycle of despair. Could it be? Were they the lost children? "Dylan!" she screamed, but the word was swallowed by the rising cacophony of tortured whispers, melding together into a symphony of anguish. Clara fought against the suffocating panic. She pressed onward, pushing through the invisible barrier that surrounded her like smoky tendrils, each breath more labored than the last. "Help us!" they chorused, the voices scraping at her resolve. She dared to look at one face, its features half-formed and melted like wax under heat. The child's eyes were brimming with unshed tears. "Save me!" it cried, stretching a hand toward her. But another voice broke through. "Leave now! They'll take you too!" It thundered in her head, a fierce urgency that bolstered her resolve. Clara's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage, drowning out the sorrowful pleadings of the lost children. "Dylan!" she cried again. "Where are you?" The shadows around her danced, taunting her with the knowledge of what lay unseen. The smell of rust and decay wafted up, mingling with the thick oil scent that stung her nostrils. The glow intensified, revealing a small opening, an access hatch, eerily beckoning her closer. She could almost hear Dylan's laughter, a fleeting sound buried under layers of horror. Desperation filled her chest. Against every instinct screaming for her to retreat, she edged toward the hatch. What lay beyond it? "Come," the whispers urged, turning, coiling around her mind, wrapping tighter with each heartbeat. "Join us." Clara's fingers brushed the rusted handle. The metal felt chillingly alive beneath her touch. She hesitated, mind racing, as flashes of memories darted before her. The faces of the townspeople, their reluctant smiles, the warnings she dismissed, all twisting into a grotesque collage of dread. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the field, extinguishing the green light. The sudden darkness was a suffocating nightmare, swallowing sound and light. Panic surged within her. "Mom!" At last she heard him, Dylan's voice, spilling through the void that now enveloped her like a closing fist. The shadows receded, revealing a distant glint of familiar, comforting light. "Dylan!" she yelled, lurching towards it. But every step she took away from the hatch made the darkness roar with anger. The whispers turned to shrieks. "Turn back! Turn around!" They echoed like a funeral dirge, a warning that struck at her core. Her resolve wavered as shadows lunged forward from the corners of her vision, all-consuming and desperate. She could either run toward the voice she loved, or abandon the call of the darkness that longed to pull her in. Clara's heart slammed against her chest, adrenaline surging as the two forces waged war inside her. Would she be brave enough to uncover the truth of the sinister rules etched into this cursed oil field? Or would she become another whisper among the shadows? "Clara," came a soft voice just behind her. A chill raced down her spine. "You have to decide." The darkness trembled with an anticipation that sent fear coursing through her veins. In that moment, she knew her choice would change everything. What choice would she make? The shadows shifted restlessly, waiting for her answer. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps. the chill of the night air swirling around her like an unholy shroud. Every instinct at her to flee, yet all she could think of was Dylan. "Mom!" His voice was haunting, echoing through her mind, urging her forward like a moth to a flame. With trembling hands, she wrapped her fingers around the rusted handle of the hatch. It was cold, shockingly so, as if it had absorbed the bitter despair that lingered in the air. She turned it, heart pounding. The metal creaked, a grating noise that sliced through the suffocating silence. The hatch swung open, revealing a dark passageway that stretched far beyond her wildest fears. "Dylan!" she shouted, forcing herself into the darkness. Shadows twisted around her, long fingers reaching out with silent hunger. She could feel the whispers encroaching, drawing closer. "You shouldn't be here. He'll find you," they hissed in a chorus of dread. The words slithered into her mind, coiling around her thoughts. The passageway was a filthy, narrow tunnel, coated in a thick layer of slime that flickered under her touch. With every step, the dim glow from the hatch faded further into the black. The air thickened, heavy, with the rancid scent of decomposing refuse mixed with something far worse: fear. The kind that seeps into the bones, making every nerve on high alert. Clara pressed on, the darkness swallowing her whole. She wished for the warm comfort of the sun, for light to scatter the shadows that seemed to creep closer with every heartbeat. "Dylan!" she shouted again, the sound swallowed by the damp, stifling air. A fleeting flicker of hope surged through her, sparking defiance against the oppressive gloom. "Help us!" came the voice, childish, innocent, echoing from deeper within the tunnel. She steeled herself, creeping forward, each footfall a testament to her growing dread. Just ahead, she could see a dim light flickering, a pinprick of hope through the suffocating darkness. But as she approached, the air shifted. Shadows danced to life, forming grotesque shapes from peripheral glances. The faint whispers intensified, filling her mind with dread. Turn back, they howled, the sound raw, desperate. Clara hesitated, forcing herself to breathe through the encroaching panic. "No, not now," she muttered, squaring her shoulders. "I have to find him." The light grew, morphing into a blinding glare as she rushed forward, blinding her momentarily. When her eyes adjusted, they fell upon an ominous scene. A crude altar, made of rusty scrap metal, lay in a square formation. Candles flickered above it, illuminating crumpled photographs, faces twisted in agony, the missing children, their memories encased forever in unyielding darkness. Something shifted in Clara's gut. A sickening dread unfurled inside of her. "What is this?" she whispered, stepping closer, her heart racing. Then she heard it again. "Mom," Dylan's voice, softer this time, faint yet undeniably close. Desperation clawed at her as she spun around, searching the tunnel for any sign of him. There was nothing but darkness, shadows whispering and laughing, a chorus of torment that sent a chill down her spine. The altar pulsed with an unholy light, drawing her in with its deceitful promise. "Join us," the voices sighed, sweet now, soothing like velvet against her senses. Just then, the shadows began to twist, elongating, becoming more defined. They formed faces, children with hollow eyes, their mouths stretched in silent screams. Clara stumbled back, a scream escaping her lips, but it was drowned in a wave of panic. The shadows surged forward, eager to surround her, eager to claim another soul. "Get away!" she shouted, darting back, but the walls of the tunnel closed around her. Desperation clawed at her throat as she fumbled for the exit, but the light of the hatch felt impossibly far away. What had she awakened? What sins lay waiting to consume her? As the shadows closed in, Clara's world spun anew, her choice lingering, heavy like a storm cloud overhead. "Mom!" came Dylan's voice again, louder, stronger. Just before the darkness enveloped her completely, Clara made a choice. Would she run toward her son, or turn back to confront the horrors that brewed in the oil-soaked earth? The very fabric of her reality teetered on the edge, waiting for her next move. But the shadows had their plans. As the darkness surged, her world dissolved into screams and laughter, becoming a symphony of chaos. What awaited would be both revelation and terror, a final choice that would shape the destiny of more than just herself. Will she face the darkness, or will the darkness consume her alive? Clara's heart raced as she plunged deeper into the tunnel, the oppressive darkness pressing against her body like a vice. The shadows swirled around her, whispering secrets laced with malice, urging her to flee. But each call of her name, each desperate wail of "Mom!" threading through the void, propelled her forward. She stumbled, catching herself against the rough, damp wall. The flickering light ahead flickered more violently now, almost angry, as if the altar at its source was fed by her fear. With every step, the air grew heavier, suffocating her with an urgency that thudded in her ears, drowning out the soft cries that claimed her heart. "Dylan!" she shouted again, pushing against the oppressive force closing in on her. Every instinct screamed at her to run back, away from the altar that promised nothing but despair, but her son needed her. His voice was a lifeline, and she couldn't let go. As she reached the altar, the flickering candles cast unsettling shadows, distorting the faces of the lost children plastered on the altar's surface. Each sorrowful gaze pierced through her soul. Their mouths gaped in silent screams, yet the sound hung in the air, thick and tangible like smoke. "Mom!" It rang louder this time, trembling with an unspoken fear. "Where are you?" she pleaded, desperate and frantic. Clara scanned the darkness, searching for any sign of her son, but the shadows leered back. "Join us," they chanted in a chorus of soft melodies, each note tinged with dissonance. "Stay forever." It was an invitation wrapped in treachery, one that sent a shiver down her spine. Clara stepped back, a wild glance over her shoulder. The tunnel felt alive, pulsating with an energy that threatened to swallow her whole. The drawings on the altar, were they warnings or invitations? Panic surged through her, and just as she turned to flee, something twisted around her ankle, cold and clammy. A scream ripped from her throat as she stumbled and fell hard onto the grimy floor. The shadows coiled around her limbs, pulling her back towards the altar, and she fought against their grip. "No!" she cried, clawing at the ground, but the darkness pulled relentlessly. "Mom!" The voice came again, clearer now, more defined. Clara forced herself to look back, summoning what remained of her courage. In the dim light, she saw a flicker of movement emerging from the darkness, small hands reaching towards her, and a familiar face that broke her heart into 1,000 pieces. "Dylan!" she gasped, lifting her hand toward him, but the shadows tightened their hold, dragging her down. "Help us!" his voice broke, mingling with the haunting whispers that echoed in the chamber. The pull of the altar intensified, each cry and plea adding to the cacophony that filled her mind. The altar pulsated, and the photographs began to beam faintly with a ghostly light, memories of innocent laughter twisted into hollow specters. Clara felt it, a creeping coldness that wormed its way into her bones. It wasn't just darkness she faced, it was a manifestation of grief, a trap set by despair itself, hungry for more. "Join us," echoed through the tunnel, and it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was a force wrapping itself around her like a serpent, promising comfort in oblivion. "No!" she shouted, summoning her strength. Clara would not yield. She yanked her foot free, desperation fueling her as she scrambled back toward her son. But the shadows surged, dark tendrils reaching out, wrapping around her arms and legs, dragging her toward the altar. "Mom, don't! Come back!" With one final effort, Clara lunged, tears streaming down her face. What was left of her sanity clung to the shimmer of her son's hope. The altar pulsed violently, the candles flickering ominously. What lay beyond that altar? Would she find Dylan waiting on the other side, or would she step into a nightmare? The choice felt monumental, as if the very fabric of her soul hung in the balance. "Dylan!" she cried one last time, her body straining against the shadows. Just then, the ground began to rumble, a deep growl resonating through the tunnel. Clara felt the darkness pull with ferocity, as if it were awakening something ancient. What horrors would the shadows unleash in their desperate hunger for souls? "Fight," she whispered, the very word feeling like an incantation in the air heavy with dread. But as the shadows began to rip apart the silence, she realized they were not the only thing lurking in the dark. "Help us!" the chorus sang, and the air thickened with other voices, twisted whispers full of promises she knew were deadly. With each heartbeat, Clara's world spiraled further into chaos, leaving her teetering between salvation and despair. Could she save Dylan, or would she gain nothing but despair in her quest to unearth the truth buried in the oil-soaked darkness? And then she knew it was time to face what lay ahead. The shadows surged, shifting like an angry tide, clawing at her skin. Panic twisted in Clara's stomach as the whispers crescendoed, morphing into something unearthly, raw, malignant energy threatening to swallow her whole. Fear pulsed through her with every stumble she took back toward Dylan. He was so close, yet the treacherous darkness clawed at her, eager to claim another victim. "Mom!" His voice, so familiar, sent a knife of love and longing piercing through the suffocating gloom. Each utterance, filled with desperation and innocence, fueled her resolve. The shadows shrieked, a whirlwind of voices merging into a singular, horrifying wail, clawing at her sanity. "Help us!" Drawing a deep breath, Clara fought against the tide of despair. She focused on Dylan, the flicker of his face lighting her way, the last sanctuary she grasped in this nightmare. But as she lunged toward him, the altar exploded in a blaze of sinister flame and sulphurous smoke. "Stay back!" the shadows screamed, tendrils snapping angrily as they thrashed around her, clawing into her skin. It was as if the darkness had skin, a seething mass hungry for warmth and life. She felt its icy breath on her neck, a coldness that seeped into her bones. Dylan's figure flickered like a faulty bulb, and Clara's heart wrenched painfully. "No, don't disappear! I'm coming!" she cried. But a gripping tendril latched onto her wrist, yanking her downward. She clawed at the ground, fingers scraping against the rough concrete, but it was like fighting quicksand. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. "Mom, no!" Dylan's scream echoed, piercing through the fray. His face twisted, contorted with terror. And then she heard it. The black laughter, cruel and mocking, echoed around her. They reveled in her struggle, feeding off her despair. Clara's breath hitched in her throat, and she felt the fire of determination bubble within her. "Let him go! He's just a child!" Panic surged, but so did rage, igniting her blood. Her voice trembled as she faced the shadows, her body shaken but unyielding. "I won't let you take him." With each syllable, she summoned the fading remnants of her strength, pushing back against the dark. She gripped the tendril tighter, pulling with raw force as she twisted her body against its grip. The shadows shrieked, wails morphing into screeches of frustration as they strained to hold on. The altar quaked, candles flickering wildly, casting ghastly images that danced on the walls, a sea of faces crying out in torment. Clara's mind raced to process the terror around her, but each fleeting thought crumbled under the weight of despair. She couldn't think. She could only act. In one fierce pull, Clara broke free, the darkness recoiling in shock as she lunged toward Dylan. He was just a few feet away, his face swallowed by panic, but burning with the same desperate hope she clutched. "Dylan, grab my hand!" she shouted. She reached out, fingers trembling as she neared the barrier made of pure terror. But the force that held him was stronger, a vicious grip that crashed over him like a dark wave. "Join us," they sang again, words dripping like venom. "No!" Clara's heart thundered, the echo rising higher as she steeled herself. One step, then another, she raced toward him, never looking back as he cried out her name. The pull of the altar threatened to drag her down, but this time she'd fight until her last breath. Just as she felt the warmth of his hand brush against her fingertips, an intense tremor rattled the ground beneath her. Darkness erupted, a violent surge sweeping through the tunnel, rushing waves intent on drowning them both. "Dylan!" She felt a searing force tugging at her heart. Desperation seized her as she dove forward, reaching out in a final attempt. Would they be pulled apart, or would they find a way back together? As the walls shivered ominously around them, Clara's world narrowed down to one fragile moment. Could they escape this wretched fate, or would the shadows finally claim what they sought? The furious darkness roared, and in that instant, everything fell silent. What lay in wait beyond that veil of silence? The silence hung heavy, a suffocating blanket wrapped around Clara's heart. In that moment, all sound ceased. Even the frantic throttle of her breath stilled as she plunged into an abyss thick with fear. Time lost its meaning. The shadows loomed large and ominous, their breath hot and heavy against her skin. Then came the sound, a soft, haunting whisper. It scraped against her mind like fingernails on a chalkboard. "You belong here." The words lingered, a lure stuffed with false promises, tempting her into despair. "Dylan!" Panic surged through her again, severing the oppressive quiet as she clutched at the fragment of warmth fading in her reach. She bolted forward, forcing herself to pierce the darkness. Each step felt like an eternity, the ground beneath her shifting and writhing as if it sought to reclaim her for itself. "Mom, please!" Dylan's voice crackled through the silence, a beacon that pulled her closer. It was fragile, yet so filled with urgency. The child was caught in an elaborate web of darkness, struggling but unable to break free. Clara could almost see his silhouette, indistinct yet alive, trapped in a horrible embrace. As she pushed closer, a chilling wind swept through, knocking her back. It surged around her, a swirling vortex that howled with rage. "Give in," the shadows demanded. Wildly, cold fingers grazed her cheeks, whispering her fears back to her, counting her sins and regrets, slathering them with mockery. "Weakness binds you. Come and join us." Clara felt her knees threaten to buckle, but the image of her son anchored her. She gritted her teeth, summoned every ounce of defiance. "No, I will break you." Her voice rang out, firm and steady, slicing through the haze. She stumbled forward again, clawing through the darkness, refusing to let despair take root. The shadows recoiled from her voice, the masses whispering among themselves, flickering like flames uncertain of their own existence. A devouring force trembled at the pit of her stomach, shaking her resolve with every heartbeat. They were pulling her deeper, whispering, beckoning, like dark waters waiting to swallow her whole. "Mom!" A frantic scream, desperate and raw, tinged with the sweet innocence of childhood. Heart pounding, Clara launched herself toward the faint glow of Dylan, fingers stretching in blind desperation, fighting against the invisible restraints that sought to keep her from him. With each inch, she could feel the weight of the shadows pressing down harder, squeezing the air from her lungs. She gasped, panic clawed at her throat, straining against the answer for how to save him. Above the malevolent whispers, there was an undertone, a drawing, as if the very shadows were plotting. Just as she thought she could reach him, the darkness roared back, enveloping her in an icy grip. "You're too late," it bellowed, the sound rattling her bones, reverberating through the tunnel. Clara fought the urge to scream, to panic, as if it felt as if the world was collapsing around her. But then, something shifted in the air. For a split second, the shadows thinned, revealing a glimmer of piercing light. The grasp on Dylan faltered slightly, a brief opening. Clara seized the chance, adrenaline surging through her limbs. "Hold on!" she screamed, sprinting toward her son. "Mom!" he cried, the desperation bleeding into heartache. With a final push, Clara charged through the remnants of shadow. She seized Dylan's trembling hand, their grip tightening like a lifeline. What had been a dull thrum exploded into deafening noise, a chaos of laughter and wails pushing against them, as if the shadows were erupting in rage. "Together!" she shouted, realizing the trick. The shadows could not stand against their united force. But before they could fully break away, a deafening roar echoed, shattering any remaining echo of silence. The ground shook beneath their feet, and Clara felt the darkness begin its last grasp. "What's happening?" Dylan gasped, eyes wide with terror. Clara looked into her son's frightened face. Would they break free, or would darkness drag them back into its depths? Because beyond the veil of shadow, there awaited something far worse than either could imagine. The shadows pulsed with anger, swirling violently as Clara and Dylan clung to each other. The ground quaked beneath them, every tremor like a reminder of the peril pressing in from all sides. Clara felt bile rise in her throat, her heart a frantic drumbeat, each thud pounding the urgent need to escape this darkness that threatened to consume them. "Stay close," she shouted, fearing to lose him. Light flickered around them, teasing a path forward as the shadows writhed in fury, a monstrous storm unwilling to yield. They surged forward, hand in hand, eyes narrowly focused on the pinprick of brightness, dancing just beyond the reach of despair. "Mom, it's so scary!" Dylan's voice trembled, evident fear coloring each desperate syllable. The shadows hissed, latching onto his vulnerability. "Shh, you'll be safer here," they cooed, coaxing him away with sweet, sinister tones. "No!" Clara's voice rang out, defiant and fierce, cutting through the insidious whispers. "Don't listen to them!" She reached out, kissing Dylan's forehead, grounding him with her warmth. "Together, we can fight this." In that moment, the shadows recoiled, as if her determination sparked a fire within the cold grasp of darkness. Shadows shrieked in anger, their once vibrant forms turning chaotic, curling back into themselves as she forged ahead, dragging Dylan alongside. They pressed forward through the haze, each step fueled by determination, but pierced by the chilling specter of doubt. The light ahead seemed closer, yet each inch felt like an unraveling thread. The shadows were relentless, biting at them, each phantom claw a reminder of their hopelessness. The closer they got, the heavier Clara felt the suffocation of despair clawing at her lungs. Suddenly, a figure emerged in the light, a man with sunken eyes and a face twisted in anguish. "Help us," he rasped, a voice so full of sorrow it sent a jolt of fear through Clara. "You must! Don't let them take you!" His mouth stretched into an unnatural grin, a mask of madness, as shadows writhed around him, pulling him back. "Mom!" Dylan clutched at her hand, wide-eyed. "He's like them!" Terror gripped her heart. Clara hesitated, every instinct telling her to flee. Yet the man seemed trapped, torn between them and the very essence of darkness that sought to claim him. "You must take my place! You must!" he shrieked, reaching out with thin, skeletal fingers. "No!" Clara yelled, dragging her son backward. The shadows seized the man, pulling him into their depths, his cries echoing mournfully through the chaos. "Run!" The command blasted through Clara as they turned to sprint. Now, the urgency of their flight filled the air as muffled sobs became thunderous roars. Each pulse of the shadows was a heartbeat, a reminder of the race against doom. The light ahead flickered, but remained steadfast, promising escape if they dared brave the shadows together. But shadows were cunning. As they ran, Clara felt them latching onto her hair, clawing at her clothes, each grip a whispered threat of despair. "You'll join us. You'll belong." "No!" she shouted, teeth gritted, the sheer intensity of her will a beacon against the smothering darkness. "Mom, I can't keep running!" Dylan gasped, fatigue seeping into his breath. Tiny body. Then, out of the darkness, an echoing laughter erupted, bone-chilling and cruel. "You're too late now. You have always been part of us." Clara paused, dread melting her bones. The shadows coiled tighter, submitting every ounce of strength to draw them back. Then, suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the depths of the light, a force that illuminated the dark, momentarily splintering it apart. "Hold on!" Clara cried, hope mingled with desperation. What was this light? Could it be their salvation? But as they surged toward it, a deep voice boomed around them. "You'll pay the price for crossing us." Shadows answered with pulsing roars, a growl from the depths challenging their defiance. They bolted, the shadows shrieking louder, a cascade of fury nipping at their heels. Could they escape the curse lurking in the dark, or would the shadows drag them down forever? The light swelled around them, brightening as they pushed onward, but amid that brilliance, doubt pierced Clara's mind. What lay in wait beyond the reach of the light? The light surged, and Clara's heart raced, pushing her forward as she struggled to comprehend its brilliance. "Just a little further," she urged, her grip on Dylan tightening, their hands slick with fear. The shadows were struggling to reform, screeching in primal rage as they clawed at the air behind them. A spine-chilling wail erupted, echoing through the void, filling her ears with a chaotic roar. It was a sound of anger, of hunger, lusting to devour them. "You're running out of time," they hissed, voices intermingling, draping around Clara like fog. Dylan stumbled, nearly pulling Clara down with him. "Mom, I can't, he wheezed, legs trembling beneath him. The fading energy in his voice mirrored the flickering hope illuminating their path. The shadows sensed the weakness, their grasp lengthening, ready to snatch away the last remnants of warmth escaping Clara's heart. "Hold on, baby!" She felt panic rising, glancing over her shoulder, steeling herself against the looming darkness. "We can't stop now!" The light pulsed as they neared it, urging her on, promising salvation. It felt alive, vibrating with energy, almost like a heartbeat, echoing with each step they took. The laughter returned, deeper now, vibrating in her bones. "You think you can escape us?" it mocked. "You are ours. We will never let you go." "Stop!" Clara screamed into the void, desperation twisting her resolve. "You don't control us!" But the darkness slithered closer, weaving around them, relentless. A shadow lunged from the corner of her eye, sharp and menacing, becoming something more tangible, more real. Clara's heart sank as she recognized it. It was the twisted figure of the man they had seen earlier, his sunken features more ghastly now, a cruel twist of fate. "Join me," he whispered, lips curling into a sinister grin that bore no warmth. "You can't fight what you don't understand." "No!" she shouted, but the certainty in her voice faltered, mixing with the uncertainty in her heart. Was this what he meant? Were they really powerless against these dark forces? The light ahead flickered ominously, dimming in response to the man's presence. More shadows joined him, surging into focus, swirling greedily like storm clouds. Clara felt the cold seeping into her bones, dread creeping in as the shadows loomed larger, distorting the space around them. "Mom, I'm scared," Dylan cried, his voice small, breaking through the chaos. She turned to him, determination igniting again. "We have to believe, Dylan, just believe." With renewed fervor, she propelled them both toward the light, the energy pulsing stronger against the dark. But the shadows were slick, liquid-like, reaching out, trying to pull them down into their depths. With each step they took, Clara felt fingers of despair curling around her ankles, tempting her to surrender. "Join us, Clara," the shadows whispered seductively, making promises of dark comforts, of safety against the world beyond. Clara flinched, memories flooding back, the pain of her past clawing at her sanity. Images of lost moments, of joys snatched away in darkness, flickered behind her eyes, threatening to fracture her resolve. But just when Clara thought they might succumb, she thrust her arm forward, focusing all her fear into the brightness. "We are not like you," she shouted, her spirit surging, almost buoyed by the light, when suddenly an unseen force shoved against them, sending Dylan tumbling away. "Dylan!" Clara screamed, reaching without a second thought, as shadows lunged to cradle her son in crushing darkness. "I'm here, Mom!" he cried out, terror laced in his voice. The shadows tightened their grip around him, dragging him back into their depths. Clara's heart stopped, the world narrowing to that singular, horrific moment. "Let him go!" she roared, raw fury fueling her to rush toward him. But the shadows flared, encircling her, slick and cold, ready to ensnare her again. In that harrowing instant, she realized the price. To believe was hard, but to protect was even harder. The shadows had taken them before. Would she have to make a choice between saving her son and saving herself? Clara steeled her gaze, every ounce of maternal instinct roaring within her. But was it enough? And as she fought against the pull of darkness, the line between what was real and what was a cruel illusion blurred, the darkness beckoning with promises as Dylan struggled. What price would she have to pay to rescue him from the clutches of the shadows? Would her determination be enough once again? The tightness of the air thickened as uncertainty cast a shroud over them once more. Clara felt the darkness closing in, the shadows clawing at her back as they engulfed Dylan. She reached desperately for him, but the more she fought, the more it seemed to tighten its grip. "No!" she screamed, determination bubbling into fury. "Not my son!" In that instant, something inside her shifted. Clara's heart raced, a wildfire igniting the fear consumed by despair. The horrors of the past, the hushed whispers, the vanishings, the pain, flooded her mind, and with it came clarity. This was not just about her and Dylan. It was about breaking the cycle of fear that suffocated this town and the children lost within these cursed shadows. "Dylan!" she shouted again, her voice bursting like the dawn through the night. She felt the shadows shrink back slightly, unnerved by her ferocity. "We're coming together, no matter what!" Suddenly, she lunged forward, gripping the cool, clammy shapes that wrapped around her son. The world twisted, and Clara's heart screamed for Dylan as she twisted her body, pulling him, a raw surge of love propelling her. A clarity sliced through the noise. She realized the shadows fed on fear and despair. "Let him go!" she bellowed, eyes blazing, injecting every ounce of fierce love into those words. The shadows wailed in protest, their voices a cacophony that ricocheted against the walls. But as she fought against their hold, something shifted within the darkness. Slowly, she saw Dylan's face emerge through the murk. Hope flickered in his wide, terrified eyes. "Mom, help me!" he cried, inching closer. She felt the tug of despair pulling at him, but she grabbed onto the pure strength of their bond, holding tight to him as she pushed deeper into the shadows. "Together!" The word echoed, resonating through the air like a prayer, and with it came a burst of light, flaring against the dark like a beacon of hope. Dylan reached out, desperation and fear coloring his voice. She could feel the shadows recoil, but they were relentless, their tendrils snapping angrily. But Clara was stubborn. It was as if a dam shattered inside her, and the flood of love and resolution poured out in waves. "No!" she roared, turning her back on the darkness. The shadows hissed and writhed, trying to regain their footing with furious, malignant persistence. "Run!" she shouted to Dylan, twisting in one explosive motion and breaking the spell holding them apart. She thrust her hand forward, and in an instant his small fingers slipped into hers, warm and real, igniting the last flicker of light in Clara's heart. With a debt of hope swirling around them, Clara barreled forward. Shadows lunged, but she wouldn't relent. They were trapped in this cursed cycle, and together they could shatter it. "You will not take us!" she cried, invoking the strength and warmth of every loving memory, driving it into the core of the night. As they sprinted forward, the shadows fractured beneath the weight of their bond, twisting and collapsing into themselves with anguished screams that rattled the very fabric of the tunnel. But Clara and Dylan pushed through, the bright light blooming ahead, promising salvation that fueled their escape. With the last of her energy, Clara led them both through to the shimmering portal of light at the end of the tunnel. The walls of darkness shook with rage, an angry roar echoing behind them. But Clara pressed on, her heart leading them to safety. And then they burst into the light, the shadows receding in a howling tempest, leaving the remnants of their power shaking, dissipating into the corners of oblivion. They emerged into the soft glow of dawn, fresh air filling their lungs, sunlight warming their skin, a new day dawning where darkness could not tread. Clara fell to her knees, gasping as she clutched Dylan to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Finally free, they were alive, together. "I thought I lost you," she whispered, wrapping her arms tightly around him, warmth flooding her heart like a healing balm. The shadows, the horrors, didn't matter anymore. They had faced the impossible and prevailed. "I knew you would find me, Mom," Dylan said softly, his voice filled with innocent faith, and she pulled him close, inhaling the comforting scent of him, something she feared she might never experience again. As the sunlight painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Clara understood she had not only saved her son, but shattered the chains of despair that gripped the cursed oil field. Together, they could rebuild. Together, they would create a legacy free from darkness. With strength renewed, Clara rose, holding Dylan's hand tightly in hers. A new journey awaited them back in town, the whispers replaced with laughter and warmth. A community ready to heal, bearing the wounds of the past, yet embracing the promise of tomorrow. Together, they took their first steps towards home, back to the life waiting for them, both aware that, united, they could face any darkness that dared cross their path again. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your engagement means everything to us.